The Italian Film Commissions Association. Do you want to shoot your film in Italy and don't know where to start from? The Italian Film Commissions Association offers you the know-how and support you are looking for. Fred.
This is Natasha Stojanovic for Fred Film Radio.
Fred Film Radio, z vami sem Bor Proteršek.
Fred Film Radio, sono Angela Prudenzi.
Essa é a Fred Film Radio e aqui é a Mariane Murissal do Festival de Berlim.
Angela Cerbi pour Fred Film Radio, on est au Festival de Venise.
Fred, the festival experience in 23 languages.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Big Fred Tuesday, your weekly roundup of all things cinema on Fred Film Radio, the Festival Insider. I am as ever your humble host, Matt Micucci, coming to you from my isolation station in Prague. But throughout this show, as usual, we will be talking about and speaking with guests from different parts of the globe. But before we get to it, let's begin with a round of appetizers, if you will, by way of some of the top stories announced this week in the world of film. First off, organizers of the Palm Springs International Film Festival of the United States have announced that the 32nd edition of the event has been pushed back nearly 2 months and will run from February 25th through March the 8th, 2021. The festival had originally been set to open on January 7th, and the decision was taken, of course, in response to the global pandemic. Palm Springs is, of course, one of the major stops of the award season circuit, and next year's edition of the festival will conclude about 7 weeks before the Oscars, which has itself been postponed to April 25th. Now let's head over to the United Kingdom, as it was announced by Universal Pictures last week that its production of Jurassic World Dominion has resumed shooting. The announcement was made in response to a press report of a production halt due to positive COVID-19 tests among the crew that had proliferated among some of the major British news outlets. Dominion is the 6th film in the 27-year-old franchise, and it stars Chris Pratt, as well as Bryce Dallas Howard, and of course Sam Neill, Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum, among others. The film is scheduled to open in less than a year in June 2021. Also, let me briefly mention that a few weeks ago on this very show, we spoke with Hugo Rozak, head of the film industry office of the Karlovy International Film Festival, about this year's digital edition of the Eastern Promises industry section. The edition reached its conclusion and its awards have been handed out, including the Works in Progress Award for the debut feature of Hoeij Kiss, a Slovak-Hungarian co-production titled Wild Roots. For all other winners, including the First Cut Plus awards, check out the festival's website, kviff.com. And finally, let me tell you what we have in store for you, dear listeners, today on this spanking new episode of the Big Fred Tuesday. First, we will be meeting Anthony Andrews, co-founder and creative director of a London-based film exhibition company, We Are Parable, which is currently collaborating with the British Film Institute on a week-long program takeover highlighting British black cinema. We will also be joined by Boyd van Hoeij to talk about the Luxembourg City Film Festival and its new initiative, a series of monthly physical screenings titled Lux Film Lab. And we will also be joined by Ludovica Fales, the Italian researcher and director who will be giving a course on experimental and interactive cinema. The project is named Open Vision and is presented by the Cineteca di Milano in collaboration with the Red Shoes Cultural Association, which promotes the history of British cinema in Italy. There will be plenty more for you to sink your ears into throughout this episode of the BFT, aka the Big Fred Tuesday, and we will be getting this show on the road in a moment. We Are Parable is an award-winning London-based film exhibition company, and they're currently collaborating with the British Film Institute on a week-long series of online events designed to spark debate around black British film, past, present and future. The takeover is titled Who We Are, and here to tell us all about it is We Are Parable's co-founder and creative director, Anthony Andrews. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I've just found out about We Are Parable, actually, and it's just a fascinating company and initiative, and I would love to know more about it. And just so that the listeners know more about it as well, would you maybe care to introduce it a little bit and just say a few words about what it does?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Anthony, and I'm the co-founder and creative director of a company called We Are Parable. And essentially what we are is an award-winning film exhibition company where we offer audiences all up and down the UK with opportunities to experience black cinema in culturally relevant, innovative and memorable ways. And what that means is that we create experiences within cinemas. And probably when I say that to people, people are like, well, what does that mean? So the example I give, because I think the way to describe it best is in an example, is when Black Panther came out in 2018, we took over a space in London, and we were approached by Disney and the BFI to say, okay, go off and do something incredible with this film and with this event. And we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we built an Afro-futuristic kingdom within inside a cinema foyer? And what that meant was that we were going to have cosplayers, we were going to have African arts and crafts makers, designers, dancers, booksellers, really to create this culturally relevant, a celebration of culture, African culture in the BFI. So people felt much more connected with the film. They felt immersed in the environment of the film. And that's what we've been doing for the last 7 years. Really just trying to build out environments within films that are culturally relevant experiences and memorable experiences for our audiences to really experience film in a different and innovative way. And a way that enables them to see themselves represented not only on screen, but in the actual environment of where they're watching the film.
So in a way, just so that I see if I can understand it correctly, you use the film as a sort of a starting point for something greater, something that is a really immersive experience. So
we use the phrase experience over everything, and essentially what that means is that yes, the film is very much the starting point, but what we want to do is create different ways for you to further contextualize your understanding of the film. So Black Panther is a perfect example because yes, it's a cool Marvel film and it's part of the MCU. That's fantastic, but for the people that we serve, the black community within London and in the UK, that film was just a real turning point for for our community. The fact that there was essentially almost an all black cast and crew, director, writer, producer, costume designer. It was a real display of everything that we've been saying that we can do, that we can create amazing moments on screen. So knowing how important and how relevant that film's release was going to be, we wanted to really deepen and celebrate the culture that was existent on screen and bring that to life within the cinema.
Just going back to like the company itself, when was it founded and what was sort of the first project and why was it founded even? Yeah,
these are great questions. So it was founded in 2013 with myself and my wife Tian, who we both run the business. So we've been going for about 7 years, and it kind of came about when we were kind of going through a bit of a rough period in our lives. It was a bit of a down period, and we put on our favorite film, which is Coming to America. And we were watching that, we loved it. And then one of us turned around to the other, I can never remember who. And we said, isn't it funny that we've never seen this film in the cinema? Because obviously when it came out, I think we were like sort of 7 and 9 respectively. So we were way too young to have seen it in the cinema. But over the years, it's turned into our favorite film. So we thought, isn't it funny that we've never seen it in the cinema? And we thought, okay, well, you know what? Actually, let's go and see it in the cinema, because we knew a lot of people who are our age who felt the same. They'd never seen such an incredible film, a film that's been so instrumental to their sort of adolescence on the big screen. So we went to our local cinema and said, hey, can we put this film on? And they were like, absolutely. We realized pretty early on that it was going to be the 25th anniversary of the film back in 2013. And we thought, what a perfect time to create a real celebration around this event. And then when we thought about the fact that, yes, it's Coming to America, one of our favorite films, the fact that it was celebrating its 25th anniversary, we thought, well, you could just stick people in a cinema and watch it and people would love it. But actually, is there anything more that we can do? Is there a way that we can really show everyone just how much we love that film? And that's when the additional experiences started coming in. So to that end, we turned our local cinema into an African marketplace. Again, we had arts and crafts makers. We had rose bearers sort of adorning people with rose petals as they walked through the door. We we had dancers, drummers outside the cinema, really immersing you in the world of Zamunda as much as possible. So it was, and I think people just said, like, I've never been to a cinema like this. I've just walked in and got my popcorn and watched the film and come out again. But actually people just wanted to stay in the environment and really be part of it. And I think, seeing that for the first time, seeing the kind of responses and seeing audiences' reactions to that was just what was the catalyst to enable us to do more and more over the next coming years. And, we've just been doing events like that because I think that feeling of seeing audiences respond in such a positive way to something that you've brought into the world is a feeling that, is still so fulfilling to have that feeling, that you've provided audiences with that. So, that's just something that we continue through to today.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of your previous projects and initiatives that you worked on, and one of the ones that caught my eye was a celebration of the great Spike Lee.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, so that came about in 2017. So that was a project that I'd been working on for about a year. I'm a massive Spike Lee fan. I've kind of grown up on his films over the years. And, at the time I didn't know, there wasn't a retrospective of his work, or so I thought, but there was one a couple of years before we started getting into this, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. So I thought, well, I'll tell you what, let me show 12 of his films over 9 months in 2 different cities, London and Manchester. And again, we would try and bring out the experience in these films as much as possible. So for the very first film that we showed, it was a screening of Mo Better Blues, the film with Denzel Washington as a saxophonist. And to that end, we had a live saxophonist play music in a cinema in East London, set to the music of the film. So she was playing over the score of the music of the film, again, immersing people in that world as much as possible. And then we had block parties in Brixton. We had Q&As to further deepen people's understanding of Spike Lee's work. And then out of the blue, well, I say out of the blue, it was, there was a few steps involved, but essentially Spike Lee got in contact with us and said, hey, I'm going to be in London for the next few days. Can we work together? And we were like, absolutely. We weren't quite sure what that meant, but then as we spoke to him more and more, it turned out that he wanted to do an actual audience with Spike Lee event. So it took 3 days of sort of pulling it together and working with a cinema in central London who were amazing in getting it all together. And then we had Spike Lee on stage talking to 400 people at, in the middle of town. And he was only supposed to stay for 2 hours. He ended up staying for well over 4 hours, signing, memorabilia, taking pictures of people, and just, being an incredibly, giving and kind, person, and someone who we have a lot to thank for. I often say Spike Lee changed my life twice. Once through the films that he has made, and have really, shaped my film, tastes and preferences. And then secondly, because, he, got on his laptop and decided to email us and ask us to collaborate. I think if, for that latter moment, if that had happened, there's so many things that wouldn't have happened now that have happened to us. So yeah, I've got a lot to thank Spike Lee for.
It must have been a thrilling experience to see it all come together.
Incredible. Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Just, they say never meet your heroes. And although he is a little bit, he can be quite intimidating to some. He's a lovely guy, and, someone who, once you've proven yourself to him, he's someone who's very willing to help you out and collaborate with you. And we've stayed in touch as well, which has been great. And, we always, whenever he comes out of a film, we always say congratulations. He always comes back and says, oh, thanks so much. Hope you guys are keeping well. And we're in constant communication about potentially doing something further down the line. So, hopefully watch this space and see what we can do in the future.
And, so far from what you've been telling me, I really understand or perceive this project as being important as well, because if I think of cinema or art in general as a way to sort of create discourses or discussions and embrace cultures of all kind, here what's happening is the celebration of Black culture in cinema, as we've been talking about cinema. Have you seen that side of the project work so far? How would you sort of describe that, the impact?
Yeah, I mean, the impact has been amazing. I think, film really does offer us an opportunity to talk more about our lived experiences. And I think, the reason our business was born was by, a sense of frustration from audiences about not seeing themselves on screen, but then, seeing themselves on screen, but then not having the additional experience that we provide. So we really see that, what we offer is a way of celebrating the culture without, we celebrate the culture, but then we also give that additional experience that I guess gives people that cultural relevance that they're looking for.
But, we'll talk about this new initiative with the BFI in a second, but I just wanted to ask you, do you perceive this moment then as a time of change, in terms of representation?
Yeah, I mean, we seem to have been here before, because I feel like every time when something seismic happens, it does feel like, yes, this is the moment when something may change. I mean, I'm always very optimistic and very hopeful for change, but, there's a part of me that always has to use the past as empirical information to say that, yeah, okay, look, we're so close, but then something else happens and then we take a couple of steps back. So I really do hope that, this time that we've spent at home and these horrible images that we've seen from America, with George Floyd and other cases that have happened since, that this does really, allow us to collectively stop and think about what's wrong with our world and see how we can change it. But, already we're starting to see the rhetoric and the narrative change around Black Lives Matter, and it being seen very much in the UK as a political issue as opposed to a morality one. So, I'm concerned about how the narrative is changing. But however, I am very uplifted and inspired by young people who are really taking the baton and running with it and, saying that they're not going to tolerate injustices and racism anymore. And I think, we really, as the older generation, we really do have to look to them to really carry it forward. And we need to be able to support them, not criticize them, but make sure that they feel supported and they feel, I guess, lifted up by the older generation.
We're going to take a short music break, but when we return, Anthony Andrews will still be with us to talk about We Are Parable's takeover program, Who We Are, currently taking place across various BFI channels and platforms. And we are back with Anthony Andrews, co-founder and creative director of We Are Parable, the award-winning film exhibition company. And so far, we talked a little bit about the history of We Are Parable and some of its goals and objectives. But right now, We Are Parable is collaborating with the British Film Institute, the BFI, on a takeover program titled Who We Are. So, Anthony, would you be able to tell us a few words about it, first of all?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, up until now, we've really focused quite heavily on black film, films with black talent either in front of or behind the screen from America. And that's because, a number of the films, there's just more films that come out from the States. And, the Black Panthers, the Queen and Slims, we've shown a lot of those. And I think when the BFI approached us and said, okay, look, there's an opportunity to do something here and to say something. And, we want to hear what, we want to hear what you would do, with this particular, these particular resources. We thought, there's an opportunity to talk about Black British film, in a way that I don't think we have done before. And I think, when we were putting this project together, I was thinking about Black Lives Matter and how in the UK we've responded to it in a certain way that's different from the US. And I thought actually there's something about the way that we approach film in this country as black people, is very different to the way black people in America, approach film. So I thought actually there's a real great opportunity to talk about our responses, to, societal issues that affect Black British people. So I wanted to have a whole season that really focused on our lives, on our lived experiences as Black British people. And I thought there are a number of films that deal with that, such as Horace Sauvé's Pressure, Menelik Shabaz's Burning an Illusion. There's so many films, Babylon, so many films that we could look at and say, these are lived experiences and these are themes that haven't gone away. So I thought there was a really great opportunity to bring some of those archive films to the fore and actually show how little has changed and how actually generations were talking about, the generations from 4 decades ago were talking about the same things we're talking about now. So it just felt like a real sort of important and relevant time to be, revisiting these films, perhaps recontextualizing them, or maybe introducing them to people for the first time. So yeah, that's kind of how the season came about.
Exactly, yeah, because I was looking at the program and it strikes me as being very varied. And also there's films coming from different eras, which is great. And like you said, it's not just, a celebration of these films, but also I feel like a lot of these films haven't really been seen by a lot of people. So it'll be a great introduction to them. And, speaking of the program is great and we talked a bit about that, but I understand that there will also be online conversations and workshop tutorials to go with that.
That's correct. Yeah. So I think, the best way to understand what we're doing with Who We Are is, it's really threefold. So first of all, we're looking at the past, and that is, as you mentioned, the films that, that have kind of, illustrated our history over the last 4 decades, from Menelik Shabazz all the way through to the film like The Last Tree with Shola Amu. Then, with the present part of what we're doing with Who We Are, we're going to speak to filmmakers who are, contemporary filmmakers or filmmakers who are very much established, as well as the emerging ones, and talk about how they have navigated the Black British film industry, how they get their work done, what advice they can pass on to Black British creatives, and some of the work that they may have seen from Black British filmmakers before them that have inspired their creative decisions. So that's very much the present. And in addition to that, we've been speaking to a number of cultural commentators, journalists, writers who have given their thoughts on the wider Black British film industry. And then, there's the final element of Who We Are is all about the future, where we have spoken to the BFI about getting a long-term commitment from them to invest in our next generation of filmmaking talent. And to that end, we have a young filmmakers competition called Who You Are, which is a competition for Black filmmakers between the ages of 16 to 19. It will be judged by ourselves and the BFI, and the winner of that competition will have their work featured on BFI Player. And then we also have a number of mentoring sessions with film professionals to really enable young people to find out about different careers in film. So it's not, if you're not thinking of being the next Spike Lee, perhaps you could be thinking about doing something in film marketing or film PR or film finance. There's so many different areas of the film industry that young people could find themselves in. What we want to do is to make sure that those avenues are made very explicit to young people who have a passion for film but aren't quite sure about how they can find a space within that particular industry.
Yeah, that short film competition is amazing. That's definitely a great initiative. I don't hear of this type of initiatives a lot, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was really important for us, for us that Who We Are wasn't just a week-long takeover that happened and then we went away again. I think, going back to your earlier point about change and lasting change, by doing a week-long takeover saying, okay, thanks a lot and then see ya, that's not gonna inspire change. We really want to see this as a catalyst for more investment, for more Black filmmakers who are coming through and providing them with a platform, a permanent platform that enables them to celebrate their work and further their careers in this country. There's a massive problem. Steve McQueen mentioned it a couple of weeks ago about Black filmmakers, Black people within the film industry not feeling like they can progress their careers. So what we want to try and do in our small way is provide these opportunities for people who are entering the industry and make sure that we can keep them here and make sure that they feel confident they can continue their career here. So it's really important that not only that this event is seen as it's not just seen as a one-off, but actually there are long-term initiatives that we're trying to establish to make sure that we nurture the next generation coming through.
Yeah, it does. It sounds amazing. And, I just remembered as well that you guys will also be collaborating with Jazz Refreshed as well.
That's correct, yeah. So Jazz Refreshed, we've known them for a good couple of years. It's the first time, amazingly, that we've actually officially collaborated together. We've done a few things, indirectly in and of each other, but it's the first time that we're partnering with them. They're going to be providing some musical interludes, to kind of punctuate our YouTube conversations. And it's all going to be, music that's, around Black British film, either featuring in Black British film or music that is associated with particular actors or singers that have been involved in Black British film. So, we're really honoured to have those guys involved. I mean, they are serious music selectors. They're a great musical collective, and we really believe in what they're trying to do with music.
I feel as well, as you're saying all these things, which all sound amazing, is that this Who We Are is also important in this historical moment in the sense of the pandemic. I mean, it does give this sense of unity, of staying together through these times of trouble. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I think I would. I think, you know, I think one of the reasons that we called it Who We Are is that, you know, lockdown has given certainly myself, I can only speak for myself, but it's given me a lot of time to really reflect on who I am and who I want to be and how I want to show up. And that just got me thinking wider about, you know, us as a community and talking about who we are. And these films, you know, Pressure is a perfect example. It really does show you that some of the battles haven't gone away. And actually, you know, by looking back at that time, we can see that, you know, what we're facing with, you know, structural and systemic racism are things that have been very much part of the social fabric for many, many years. And it's just an opportunity to say that, you know, these are the issues that, you know, people 40 years ago were facing. This is what we're facing right now. And actually our lives is one of, you know, having to fight and having to prove ourselves. But actually not only seeing that as a negative thing, but seeing it as something that shows us how resilient we are. And that's what I get from those films. It shows us how resilient we are, how adaptable we are, how flexible we are. And, you know, a lot of these films are just there to talk about and to celebrate us as much as possible. So yeah, I think lockdown has given me an opportunity to really take stock, take a step back, and, you know, think about all of the amazing things that we do and that we do as a community.
So, what exactly is the date? When will it be kicking off?
Sure. So it's happening from the 13th of July all the way through to the Friday the 17th. So we will have 3 sets of YouTube conversations, one with established filmmakers who will be talking through, you know, their experiences within the Black British industry, the Black British film industry, and we'll be talking about some of the films that have inspired them, either personally or professionally. The second YouTube conversation will be with emerging and short filmmakers who will be offering advice to Black British creatives. And then the third conversation will be with a to be announced special guest, an international special guest who will be talking about their work. And I guess, from being an outsider looking in to see what their thoughts about the British, black film industry and what lessons potentially, their film, landscape could learn from what we do over here. So those are the key events. And then obviously we've got the musical interludes with Jazz Refreshed. We've got the articles from the cultural commentators I mentioned. We'll be, celebrating a number of Black British film icons over the course of that week via social media. There will be, the competition that we'll be pushing, throughout. And we've got a few other surprises up our sleeves as well. So it's going to be a very busy week. We've been working like night and day on this. We haven't been working that long in it. So it's come together very quickly. But that's another joy of lockdown, just being able to get things out the door and get them done and, do them to the highest possible quality level. So it's been a very exciting project to work on. And, we're really excited to see how people respond to it.
And where exactly will the people be able to watch all these events? And
Sure. So the BFI YouTube channel is where you will see all of the conversations that I mentioned earlier. What I failed to mention, which I should have mentioned, was that we will have a curated collection of films that we've selected from the last 40 years, such as Pressure, Burning an Illusion, Baby Mother, Adulthood, Kidulthood. There's a number of different films that we've selected all through the years. And we'll put those together as a collection of films. We also have, we've been collaborating with Yari Igihon, who is the founder of, Soul, Celebrate Connect. And he has put together a series of short films from short filmmakers, that celebrate Black lives through Black eyes. So that will be on the BFI player. And then, you can check our social media. We are Parable on Twitter and Instagram, as well as the BFI for social media updates. So it should all be there.
Great. So thank you very much, Anthony. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
In the last interview, we talked about black culture and also mentioned jazz. So naturally, I thought it would be kind of cool to revisit an interview about one of the greatest jazz artists of all time, Miles Davis. Now, last year, a major documentary about the great trumpeter's life was released, made by the great documentarian Stanley Nelson, who, by the way, is a recipient of the 2013 National Humanities Medal from President Obama. The film is titled Miles Davis, Birth of the Cool, and I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Nelson about the film and Miles Davis, truly one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. Here's a clip from that interview from last year's BFI London Film Festival.
When did you first become aware of Miles Davis, and when did you start becoming, a fan of his stuff, of his work?
So my parents were big jazz fans, and so they had Miles all around the house. I can't remember a time where, Miles's music kind of wasn't in my consciousness. But when I went away to college, I took my father's Kind of Blue album. I kind of snuck it into my suitcase. And, I was in college and I was listening to Miles. And so ever since then, I've listened to Miles and loved his music as he went through his different phases.
All right, so Kind of Blue was the first album that you really listened to and made you aware of Miles Davis.
Yeah, and I was just at college age as Miles kind of did Bitches Brew and then went into some of the other On the Corner and some of those other things, which involved bringing funk and rock into jazz. So I was also really into that.
Yeah, it's all amazing stuff. But exactly, when I think of his career and just so much music that he made, and just the way in which he kept developing these, he kept almost reinventing his art as he went on along. There's so much to fit into a documentary, in a sense. That I'm just wondering, did you find it challenging to kind of just keep it all compact in a length that I think doesn't exceed the 2 hours?
We felt that you could tell this story in 2 hours, and you could tell this story, a comprehensive, story in the 2 hours. So that was kind of, the slot that we were given and where we wanted to go. I remember when I first started talking to the editor about it, and he was like, 2 hours? Oh, no, you can't. And we're like, no, we can do this without cutting corners. And I think we do it. I think we make a really good, entertaining film. I think if you did a film that was 3 hours or 4 hours or a 6-part series or 8, it would have to be a very different film. You can't just keep going on and on, and then there was this album, and then there was this album, and then there was, and the trials and tribulations. So I think that, we were really honored to be given, this 2 hours to make a film on Miles, and we didn't feel hampered in any way. We felt like, yeah, let's go for it. This is great.
And there's also such a great balance. I think, you don't particularly stop excessively on one album or one particular period of his life. That's also admirable. And of course, I think you mentioned it as well, great archive material. You mentioned Miles Davis's own words recited in the film, and so almost driving the film, but there's also some archival footage and sounds and music. I think some of this stuff is the first time that you see it all, or that we get to experience. Rather.
Yeah, we found footage. Miles's great friend Corky McCoy filmed like home movies of Miles, but he filmed them in 16 millimeters. So that's like really great quality, and he filmed this great stuff. So in the film, there's Miles walking on the beach. We have Miles sparring in the gym, and right. Boxing, which becomes kind of a motif that we go back to a few times in the film, of Miles kind of shadow boxing in the gym, because Miles was a great boxing fan and was a really good boxer. He would spar all the time, and the one thing they would tell his sparring partners was, just don't hit him in the lips. Just don't hit him in the lips. So we have that, and that's great footage. We're working with Sony Music, so we got outtakes of music. We have them in the studio, kind of putting together the albums. You can hear them, because Miles would let the tracks roll, and so instead of cutting between songs, it would just keep rolling, and you'd hear him in the studio. Well, let's do it this way. Yeah, let's do it that. Let's do this. Maybe put it in more of that. Yeah, play it. Play it again. All that stuff comes because Miles just would let the tape run. All through the recording session. So we got the chance to use that from Sony, and so many other things. We had thousands and thousands of pictures of Miles.
Right. And, when we talk about his music and his genius and his art, but obviously his the figure Miles Davis goes beyond that. I can't exactly remember who says this, but it was a line that really stuck out to me. It was, it was someone who was saying about Miles Davis that he didn't see the color of his skin as a liability. He saw it as an asset. And I think that was very empowering thing.
Yeah, I mean, and they say that in the context of Miles, being this really dark-skinned black man. As someone said that we interviewed, he was like the darkest black person he had ever seen, but Miles was incredibly beautiful, and there was no denying it. And you're talking about a time in America, where how do those two things sync up? How does this black skin sync up with this guy who was like, when he would walk in the room, people would be like, oh my God, and so, Miles went with that and ran with that. Miles knew he was beautiful, and he wore the clothes and had the cars and had the women and everything. And so that becomes part of, his status as an icon.
To listen to the full interview, all you have to do is head on over to fred.fm/UK. That's fred.fm/UK. Our next guest on the Big Fred Tuesday is Boyd van Hoeij, who wears many hats. Among his many roles within the film industry, he is a prominent film critic and works with the Artistic Committee of the Luxembourg City Film Festival as Artistic Advisor. The festival celebrated its 10th edition this year, and we will be talking about that, as well as the latest initiative by the Luxembourg City Film Festival called Lux Film Lab. So Boyd, welcome to the Big Fred Tuesday.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll be talking about the Luxembourg City Film Festival and the Lux Film Lab in a moment. But first, this is what I was thinking, because these are crazy times that we're living in, obviously. And you being a prominent film critic and a regular on the film festival scene at large and so on, I sort of wanted to start off by talking about the current situation that we're living through and some of its impact on the film industry as well as on the film festival scene. So first of all, do you feel that the impact of this global pandemic will be felt on the film industry for quite some time?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we're looking at least 2 years of sort of irregular business, if I can put it that way, because not only are there no festivals, but there are also no new films being made for the moment. And there are some things that are in post-production that people are finishing now and that you can sort of do, while respecting safety distance and things like that. But there's going to be a point if this continues where there'll be no new material at all. So this is something, even if we get a vaccine, even if everyone can go out again, there might be several months, if not years, where there'll be no new movies to show. So that will impact the festival world and the world of distribution and everything as well. So yeah, it's a very disruptive sort of moment that we're going to feel. The effects of that we're going to feel for a long time, I think.
And how do you feel the film world has responded so far? Have there been some responses, perhaps from film festivals or the film industry at large, that have sort of surprised you or even impressed you?
Impressed me? I don't think so. Well, not yet in any case. I think, the problem is that it was such an unexpected thing. So people don't really know how to respond. Everyone is trying out different things, but I don't think anyone is. The problem is that there's no real substitute for an in-person experience at a festival. So, people are moving things online and things like that, but it's not the same. And it's, how could it be the same? So, the problem is everyone is going to want to have that festival sort of rush that, you're familiar with as well. And I don't think that there's any way that we can do that except for in real life. So
sure, yeah. And what is the situation like in Luxembourg at the moment in terms of cinemas reopening? What's the scene looking like at the moment?
Actually, the cinemas have been open for I would say maybe 3 weeks now, but very reduced in terms of how many people are allowed in. There's 3 empty seats between one person and another, and there's only every other row that has people in it. So there's a lot of empty space around every single person. But they've reopened, and slowly people are starting to go back to the sort of the new normal, I would say. It is not normal, but yeah.
Generally speaking, would you say that film culture is strong in Luxembourg?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we are a multilingual country, but one of the languages in our country, French, is sort of gives us, attaches us to this whole idea of, French culture or French language culture. And I mean, that's a very cinephile nation. So I think in a sense we have taken at least part of that into our DNA as well. So I would say it's a pretty cinephile country. Yeah, for sure.
Would you say that that is also true in terms of the film industry? Is it a very active film industry in Luxembourg, despite it being a small nation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very small country, and I think actually we're punching above our weight in terms of where we are and what we do. I mean, the film industry isn't huge. I would say it employs about 1,000 to 1,200 people, maybe. But there's a lot of films being produced and co-produced. I mean, we do a lot of international co-productions. But I mean, that has never been the government's or the successive government's goal. I mean, the goal is not to co-produce European films. The goal is to set up an industry and get people trained, and then have Luxembourg filmmakers start making their own films. And that's what's been happening in the last, I would say, 7-8 years now. And it's actually quite exciting to see what stories they want to tell.
That's that's the goal, really, is to just sort of create. Oh, okay. Let's talk about the Luxembourg City Film Festival now. I mean, what's some of its background history, and how would you sort of introduce it to anybody who's not familiar with it?
Well, I would say it's a festival it's more aimed at the audience. It's an audience festival more than an industry festival, even if the industry side of it is getting a little bit bigger each year. Takes place in early March normally, so after Berlin. 1 week after Berlin, 2 weeks after Berlin, something like that, depending on the year. And we had the 10th edition this year. And I think actually we might have been the last festival that still happened before this whole thing.
Congratulations.
Before the whole thing started to happen. And I mean, it's a small festival. We have 2 competitions, a fiction competition and a documentary competition. And then we show a lot of things out of competition as well, and we have a special program for younger audiences. But I would say it is pretty much a general audience festival. Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, were people already talking about COVID while the festival was taking place?
Well, actually, for us it was quite tragic in the sense that we didn't have our last weekend, so the festival stopped. I would say 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through. We never had our last weekend, which is kind of sad.
Oh, right. And so this was a landmark edition, though, as far as I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's the 10th anniversary, so you try to do something special, and you try to become ever more professional, and you try to figure out, I mean, I think you get better every year in terms of figuring out what the audience likes and what the audience wants and where there are opportunities to do better. And I mean, festivals need some time to figure those things out, even as the audience itself changes also from year to year. So, you're constantly being kept on your toes. But I think we're now in a place where I think we have a good idea of what the audience wants and what the audience likes, and, where there are still opportunities for us to improve.
We will talk some more about the Luxembourg City Film Festival and a new initiative, the Lux Film Lab, which we haven't had time to mention yet, but certainly will in a moment. And we are back with Boyd van Hoeij to talk some more about the Luxembourg City Film Festival. And one thing I wanted to ask you about the 10th edition of the Luxembourg City Film Festival, which took place earlier this year, was what were some of the films that were screened as part of its program that kind of stood out?
Promising Young Woman was our opening film this year, so a female directed film. We actually had the international premiere after Sundance, so that was a nice coup for us to have that. And I think it was a film that really sort of set the tone in terms of a film that is really very accessible, but at the same time it has a sort of auteur take on the subject, and it's a very zeitgeisty film in the sense that it talks about a woman who takes revenge on all the men who have treated her badly. So I think it was really actually a great example of the kind of movie that we want to show and that we want to share with audiences.
Yeah. And in general, is it like a varied program that tends to different age ranges and so on, a varied audience?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, there's not one audience. I mean, and as I said earlier, we have a special program for kids and for teenagers in collaboration with different schools. And but even in our own competition, we try to have a program that is both coherent, but that also offers different things. I mean, we don't only want very slow art house movies, but also we don't only want genre movies either. So we try to sort of mix it up and to give people a sense of what's happening in world cinema today.
That's cool. Can you tell me a little about Lux Film Lab? This is a new initiative, right? Yeah.
This is something that we started actually this month, and we're doing that in collaboration with Cinépolis, which is a cinema chain that we work with here in Luxembourg. And the idea is that each month we're going to show one film in their cinemas that could have been part of the festival. Because, I mean, as you know, or as you can imagine, I mean, there are so many films coming out each year, and a lot of them we can't show because they'll be released before, or the rights are not available, or there's some other reason. So we just want to, try and engage the audience throughout the year and say, this could have been one of our films, this could have been one of our films. So we'll get someone of our artistic committee to introduce the film and talk a little bit about it. And it'll be like a sort of sneak preview of a movie that might come out, a few weeks or a few months later. This will take place in the Cinépolis cinemas in Luxembourg City.
Oh, so it's physical screenings?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, great.
And we had our first screening about a week ago, I would say now, and it was great. We had a sold-out house, even though that doesn't really mean that much these days, because we were in a 250-seat house and we had, I think, 55 people in there, but we couldn't fit in more. I mean, there were more people that wanted to buy tickets, but we're not allowed to have more people. So.
Oh, that's interesting because, you would think that perhaps people would be a little cautious about going to the cinemas, but it seems like people are really wanting to have those experiences back in their everyday life.
Yeah, no, I think in general in Luxembourg, things are, relatively stable and people are, the government has been very good in providing us with information and even providing us with masks and things like that. So I think there's a lot of confidence in terms of people just saying, okay, if the government says that we can do it, then it's fine and it's safe. We should be able to do it.
And so, what was the film that you screened on the first one of these events?
The film that we screened was actually supposed to be our closing film, which is The Kelly Gang, with Nicholas Hoult, Russell Crowe, George McKay. So there was a film that we had originally programmed for our closing weekend, but we never got to show. So it was nice to be able to finally share that with the audience.
Absolutely, yeah. And do you have any other titles that you can announce exclusively here, or are they? It's still.
No, I know which titles we would want to have, but they haven't been confirmed yet, so I don't think it's a good idea to talk about them now.
Right. And okay, so that sounds great. I'm not sure if you've said it already, but how long will these screenings be going on for? Is it a long-term plan?
Yeah. Basically, the idea is to do one a month, every month, except for March when the festival will be on. But otherwise, it'll be every first Wednesday of the month. We'll have a new title ready.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah. All right. So, Boyd, thank you very much for joining us. That was a very interesting snapshot of Luxembourg, the Luxembourg City Film Festival, and now we've got Lux Film Lab as well in the can. So, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Big Fred Tuesday, the weekly show on Fred Film Radio and all things cinema. Now, one of the biggest news from the world of film and the arts at large from last week was the death of the one and only Ennio Morricone at the age of 91. Ennio Morricone was, for many people, the sound of their budding cinephilia, and will forever remain one of the seminal figures in music composition for film, whose name is synonymous with movie soundtracks. Morricone composed memorable music for countless movies, including The Untouchables, The Mission, Cinema Paradiso, and The Eightful Eight, for which he was finally awarded with the Oscar for Best Original Score in 2016, having already received an honorary one for Lifetime Achievement in 2007. Some of his most memorable scores of his career were written for movies by Sergio Leone, with whom he formed a partnership that was nothing short of legendary. From A Fistful of Dollars to the very end, the two shared a one-of-a-kind collaboration that not only defined the tone of the celebrated spaghetti western movement, but will also forever remain etched in cinema history. I mean, who can ever forget the scores for such films as The Good, the Bad and the Ugly? And the Peter and the Wolf-like work on Once Upon a Time in the West? And who has not felt nostalgic or even shed a tear upon hearing Deborah's theme from Once Upon a Time in America? Aside from his work in film, Ennio Morricone released albums and wrote standalone compositions within a variety of genres, from rock and roll to jazz and beyond. And while composition and conducting remained his predilection, he was a brilliant trumpeter and even collaborated for 2 decades, from the 60s to the 80s, with an avant-garde ensemble formed with other Italian composers, named Gruppo di Improvvisazione Nuova Consonanza, which most likely provided the inspiration for the slow, oniric opening sequence of Once Upon a Time in the West. We thank him for his art and for his memories, but to compile a list of Morricone's accomplishments or even provide a detailed biographical account of his legacy would be far too arduous a task to take on and would take far longer than the time we have reserved for this show. In fact, it's probably best to end it with something he said himself, and I quote, "If you scroll through all the movies I've worked on, you can understand how I was a specialist in westerns, love stories, political movies, action thrillers, horror movies, and so on. So in other words, I'm no specialist because I've done everything. I'm a specialist in music." The Cineteca di Milano, in collaboration with Red Shoes Cultural Association, is presenting Open Visions, 3 special lessons on experimental cinema and interactive storytelling. The course is available in English via the Cineteca di Milano streaming platform, and it is given by researcher and filmmaker Ludovica Fales. Here to tell us all about it is Ludovica herself, joining us on the Big Fred Tuesday right now. So Ludovica, welcome to the show.
I'm very happy to be here. So thank you so much for having me here.
What can you tell me about Open Visions? What's it all about? You know, just a few introductory words.
So this is a course that came out from a new collaboration between Red Shoes Cultural Association, which promotes the culture and history of British cinema in Italy, and Cineteca di Milano. And we're very proud about this new collaboration. And it is about 3 special lessons on experimental and interactive storytelling. And it's hosted by the streaming platform of Cineteca di Milano. It is available in English at the cost of €3, and it's exploring the relationship between interactive and experimental storytelling, which is something I've been exploring in my research for the last 5 years. So I'm very excited to be able to offer it to a wider audience through this course.
Very simple follow-up question to that. When we talk about experimental films and interactive projects, what does that exactly mean? And perhaps you could give us some examples to help us understand what that means too.
So this course focuses on the evolution of the concepts of time, space, authorship, and spectatorship in the history of nonlinear cinema. And it goes from early avant-garde cinema, surrealist Dadaist films, and American avant-garde films such as Maya Deren's film or Stan Brackage's film, to the history of video and installation art, Bill Viola and his colleagues, and also all the way to the digital turn to actually explore current new media projects that involve the use of VR, AR technology. And what it's really about is the relationship between nonlinear cinema and interactive technologies that effectively develop the same kind of discourse, trying to counteract the sort of logocentric focus that mainstream cinema has been developed over the years. And this is a strand that has been living and developing itself all the way since the beginning of the history of cinema. And it's about exploring a new relationship between power and language, which is really about understanding the world in a different way.
How is the course structured, speaking of structure?
So the 3 sessions, actually, they are organized around these 4 pillars. They're about the sequencing of time and space, which takes place in all of these films and then projects, if we talk about interactive projects. And we also really want to explore how, from the unique author, we evolve towards a user that has full control over the journey on the audiovisual platform. So it's about the evolution of a more participatory role of the spectator that goes from being a passive spectator sitting in a screening room to becoming an active user with full agency over the audiovisual world. And this is an exceptionally important change that it took place over the course of the whole of experimental cinema, but actually became possible to be realized fully only when new media made it available to the user to the full control over the platform and the story. So if experimental films want to somehow challenge the concept of story altogether and approach and dive into a world, an audiovisual world, in a more experiential way, by giving the user the full control over the experience, this becomes a fully subjective journey, and it opens up multiple possibilities for infinite combinations of sound and vision.
This is more out of curiosity, personal curiosity, but I would love to know what, because I understand the program goes up to modern days, but what are the earliest films that are dealt with and talked about in the course?
So, as we know, Surrealist and Dadaist films, for example, since their invention, have had a shifting relationship with various non-mainstream groupings. And what we do in this course is we discuss motivation, style, technique, and significance of these movements through some case studies. And our case studies are, for example, Le Retour à la Raison by Man Ray, 1923. We also watch and discuss Anemic Cinema by Marcel Duchamp, 1926. Un chien andalou by Louis Buñuel, 1929, the most important, the masterpiece of surrealist cinema. We also move on to American avant-garde by analyzing Meshes of the Afternoon by Maria Deren, 1943. And we then move on to abstract films, structuralist films, to then touch upon video and installation art. So, for example, Cat's Cradle by Stan Brakhage, 1959, or Berlin Horse by Malcolm LeGrice, 1970, a very famous London co-op project. La Région Centrale by Michael Snow, which is the first film made with a mechanical arm and the first film to actually work on the vertical horizontal axis, sort of opening the way to what VR will do in 60 years' time from that moment. We then move on to The Reflecting Pool Cycle by Bill Viola, 1979, and Tacita Dean's installation made in 2011 called Film, which is this huge totem that was installed in the Turbine Hall in London and was celebrating celluloid in the year during which celluloid was no longer being produced. And then we move on to the Cremaster cycle, Matthew Barney's all-encompassing art cycle. And then on the third lesson, we actually analyze cross and transmedia projects that are now embracing a stronger focus on nonlinearity and redefining the relationship between story and audience in a way that is even more radical than what had been done before. And we, for example, will analyze projects such as Gaza Sderot, a very interesting project on the Gaza Strip, analyzing two towns on the two sides of the border, and showing how life takes place and develops itself along the border in such a complicated, on the very heated border. And we also analyze projects such as 18 Days in Egypt, which is an archive-based project where users were able to upload their own videos, the videos that they had themselves shot and produced during the Egyptian Revolution, and that they wanted to rescue and collect and preserve in order not to keep them on their hard drives, because they could be used as proofs in case police would actually go and search their homes. So it was also an activist project that was trying to somehow create a collective archive, but also unburdening individuals. Projects such as Prison Valley or Alma, Tale of Violence, a very interesting VR project that is sort of organized, and it's very interesting interactive documentary project that is organized on two levels, two layers, the layer of the interview and the layer of the visual. And the user can choose at any point to go between the two, and VR conversations between self and self as Sigmund Freud, a very, very interesting, ironic project based on the idea of conversation between oneself and Sigmund Freud. So these are the kind of examples that we chose to underline this evolving relationship between authorship and spectatorship.
We'll be back with Ludovica Fales to talk more about experimental cinema and interactive storytelling in a moment. And we are back with filmmaker and researcher Ludovica Fales to talk some more about Open Visions, a 3-lesson course presented on the Cineteca di Milano streaming platform in collaboration with Red Shoes Cultural Association. The course is about experimental cinema and interactive storytelling, so naturally the word interactive has popped up quite a bit in our conversation so far. But I also wanted to know, how interactive is the course itself?
So in this case, this is a collaboration between us and Cineteca di Milano, and it's actually a course that is a sort of appetizer for a bigger course that we will launch in September 2020, which will be fully interactive and which will be based on the development of new media project during the course. So we will have a minimum of 12 students who will be able to bring on their own project, and by sort of analyzing the history of the relationship between experimental and interactive films, they will actually develop at the same time a fully original project. So that that course will be fully interactive. We decided to launch it online. As we all know, we live in times that are that are changing, and where we are all unsure about what will happen and what kind of offline interaction we will be able to have in September. So this is an online course, but that is also a plus for us because it will allow participants from all over the world to join forces and form groups and teams that will then bring the project to the next level. We're in conversation with several institutions, including VR Biennale in Venice and Premio Solinas, and we are joining forces with other existing educational platforms to allow students to bring the projects forward beyond this course. And as far as this course is concerned, so the streaming platform allows users to sign in and watch the lessons, the lectures as many times as they want, and they will be able to write me if they have questions, and I will be available to them. But it's not conceived to be interactive because we would like people to watch it in their own time and to actually develop questions and curiosities that they will maybe explore at a later date if they want to join the main course.
Oh, right. So these 3 lessons are just a taste for what's to come.
Yes, that's exactly what it is about.
That's very interesting. We'll have to keep up with further developments then. You mentioned the times that we're living in, and I wanted to kind of ask you this question as well. Do you think that this is a good time to sort of experiment with newer technologies, so to speak?
So I found myself teaching online a lot in the last semester. I'm a filmmaker, I'm a researcher, I'm a lecturer, and I really consider my job as being sort of built around these 3 trajectories, and including film programming as well. And I feel that new technologies are actually expanding our ability to connect and are giving us new possibilities to discuss and communicate. There are obviously also downfalls to this. We all know that teaching online is very difficult. It requires a lot of energies on both ends. But I feel that when it comes to talking about the universe of the web, actually exploring it online is fully consistent and it's fully coherent, and it allows participants to have their own thinking time and their own sort of space to develop ideas in a completely different way. Somehow, all of the courses I've been teaching this year were very exciting because it felt like it was an exceptional time to connect. And obviously, new media allow this sort of boundaries of time and space to be overcome, because there is a possibility of connecting with people from all over the world. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what students and participants will develop, what kind of projects they will want to develop after the pandemic, what kind of need for social change people will feel they can actually explore through new media. This is an ever-changing landscape, and I feel we are still in a very experimental phase. There is no mainstream that we reach. There is no sort of there are no rules that are set. There is no grammar that is shared and considered sort of unique for everyone. So I feel that we will see very interesting projects in the months to come. People are really in need of connection. So all tools are welcome.
And you mentioned that you're a filmmaker, and I'm happy you did that, because maybe as a conclusive question, I would love to ask you about Kitchen Sink Collective, the Kitchen Sink Collective. I found out that you work with them, and I'm intrigued by it. What would you be able to tell me about about the Kitchen Sink Collective.
So the Kitchen Sink Collective is a creature that came out of the National Film and Television School. It's made out of 8 filmmakers from all over the world that studied together at film school. We were all coming from different countries. We were all based in London, and we were all very diverse in style, in sort of objectives. But we felt that by sticking together after film school, we would be able to get more chances in the industry, and we would be able to have and nourish a community of people around us that would somehow support our idea of documentary. And this is exactly what happened, because we as a collective won Christie's Projector as an award during our film school time, and we founded a mobile cinema through this by sharing the projector and sharing a studio. We decided that we were going to give cinema a home, but we also brought films to different places, to festivals. We curated film programs, always with an eye to experimentation, and also really interested in participative projects with different voices joining forces around the idea of documentary. We are all very critical of unique, essentialist, universalist definition of reality, and a universal definition of what documentary is. We strive for an expansive notion of documentary, which includes experimentation and different tools. And we also truly believe in the possibilities of going beyond individuals when it comes to making creative projects. So I think this is our philosophy, but we all continue to be artists, individual artists, and make our own films and exist as individuals as well as a group.
Well, Ludovica, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, and I hope to see you all soon if you join the main course, which is called Other Stories. So, just keep in touch with us. Bye.
All right. Well, after a conversation about experimental films, it's time to revisit another interview from the good old Fred archives. This one is from the 2014 edition of Il Cinema Ritrovato in Bologna, which feels like only yesterday. Anyways, on this occasion, I had the opportunity to sit down with the deeply influential Austrian filmmaker Peter Kubelka, who, among other things, founded the famed Austrian Film Museum. That year, he presented a major film exhibition titled Monument Film, which he described as the end of a cycle. Take a listen to this clip and find out more.
Yes, in fact, in the 50s, I made a series of films which I called metric films, which explored the fact that the film is not a moving picture, nothing moves on the screen. Film is a succession, a rhythmic succession of static images presented on a screen. And my aim was to go toward the very essence of the cinematographic event. And I made a film which I called Arnulf Rainer, as an homage to a friend who had also paid something for making it. And it was... This film consisted of the 4 essential elements, namely light, darkness, sound, and silence. And was made by hand and scissors, from 4 strips. 1 strip just black film, 1 strip transparent film, 1 strip sound, continuous sound, and 1 strip silent. And I wrote a score. The film is metric, measured, and has a balance of all those 4 elements over the time of 6.5 minutes approximately. Then 50 years passed, and the signs started to accumulate that film as the main medium of the film of film entertainment, if you want, is going to be replaced by something else, which is called approximately, which is made believe to be a successor of film, and without any much difficulties. And that is not true. You see, the digital system is just an imitation, like a photography would be an imitation of a painting and cannot replace the painting. And a digital version can never replace a cinematographic film. So I decided to do this, not to go out without a sign as a signal, and I made this work called Monument Film. It consists. I made a film which is exactly the opposite of Arnulf Rainer, same length, same elements, but at the point in time where Arnulf Rainer would have light, I would put darkness. And where there would be sound, in the Arnulf Rainer version, there would be silence. So these two films against each other are like yin or yang, if you want, or positive, negative in European speaking. It was for me the closing of my life's work. And the films are projected, there are 4 projections. One, Arnulf Rainer, then answering Antiphon, then both films side by side, and then both films on top of each other. And what happens, there many things happen. A new possibility of thinking enters the human mind, and there is, of course, there are many sensations coming out of these projections, which I do not want to elaborate verbally, because you have to see and feel it. In fact, this film is the least verbal film that you can make. And I mean, you have seen it yesterday, so you know.
It's a unique sensorial experience. In a way, I find your films to be all sensorial experiences. But what I'm interested in, because you have had such an original career, what has always been your creed in making films from the beginning and onwards?
It's very easy to say. See, I don't think I'm a special person. I don't think I'm different from anybody else. So if I make something which really pleases me, I can have hope that to please also other people, because we are all the same. So this kept me from listening to influences of what sells better or what would be pleasant. All my work I made as good as I could, and I was the judge for the quality. And I have to say, of course, I didn't get rich with this, but I have people all over the world who find pleasure in my films, and I'm very, very happy about that.
To listen to this full, extensive interview with Peter Kubelka, where we also talked about several events of his original career, all you have to do is head on over to fred.fm/UK. That's fred.fm/UK. Well, my friends, we have just about reached the finish line of yet another episode of the Big Fred Tuesday, which I hope is slowly becoming part of the fabric of your week, coming to you through the power of the internet every Tuesday on Fred.fm. But if you have heard the previous episodes, you know by now that I don't just love you and leave you. What I do is I like to send you off with some closing remarks in the form of a few more news items from the world of film that occurred or have been announced this past week. So here we go. The UK's BFI has announced the launch of a temporary fund named BFI COVID-19 UK Sales Company Organisational Support Fund. The main aim of this fund is to support British sales outfits in need of business resilience backing in these unprecedented times. The organisation is providing £500,000 from its international fund, and the beneficiaries will receive up to £25,000 each. As per official statement, the BFI has announced that these grants will help firms to keep their businesses up and running, as well as to react effectively to the new models of working that are emerging in this period in relation to film sales and distribution. The new emergency fund was opened on the 6th of July and will remain open until the 2nd of August. In other news, amidst current tumultuous times, the Hong Kong International Film Festival has confirmed that it will hold screenings in front of live audiences next month. The festival had been originally scheduled to take place in March, but was postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. The 44th edition will now run on the 18th of August to the 31st of August. The films of its world selection have been announced, and highlights include Roy Andersson's About Endlessness, Tsai Ming Liang's Days, and Pedro Costa's Vitalina Varela. The latter film earned the top prize at the Locarno Festival last August. And finally, in an exclusive interview with Variety, the artistic director of the Venice International Film Festival, Alberto Barbera, has confirmed that the prestigious annual cinematic event will run on the Lido from the 2nd to the 12th of September this year. As such, it is expected to be the first major international film event to hold a physical edition after the coronavirus pandemic. While Barbera said this edition will somewhat be slimmer, in the interview he stated that there will roughly be 55 world premieres between its main competition, its Horizon section, and out-of-competition screenings, and also that many of the films will be directed by women. With that, we really have reached the conclusion of this week's Big Fred Tuesday, your weekly roundup of news and interviews on all things cinema, premiering on Fred Film Radio every Tuesday. I urge you to join me next week for a brand new show and to continue to stay tuned to and connected with Fred Film Radio, the Festival Insider.
Fred.
This is Natasha Stojanovic for Fred Film Radio.
Fred Film Radio, z vami sem Bor Preteršek.
Fred Film Radio, sono Angela Prudenzi.
Essa é Fred Film Radio e aqui é a Mariane Murissal do Festival de Berlim.
Angela Cermi pour Fred Film Radio, on est au Festival de Venise.
Fred, the festival experience in 23 languages.
Fred Film Radio.
24/7 on Fred.fm and smartphone apps.